The Inter-Party Advisory Council (IPAC) has said it would appraise the report presented by the European Union Election Observer Mission in the outcome of the 2023 general election. Recall that Chief Observer of the mission and member of the European Parliament, Barry Andrews, in the report claimed that there were violence in Rivers, Lagos, Imo and Abia states during the campaigns and on election days. Part of the report reads, and I quote, "Overall, the widespread anticipation for well-managed elections were dashed by a flawed process, leading to widespread public disappointment and concerns about increasing voter disenchantment." But addressing journalists yesterday in Abuja, IPAC National Chairman Yabeji Sani said, and I quote, "IPAC has noted the content and recommendations of the EU report and other reports, and we respond as active and most critical stakeholder in the electoral process within a fortnight." IPAC has put in place a committee to carry out a thorough review of the 2023 election with a view to engender dialogue between all stakeholders on electoral reforms to achieve improved democratic practices in Nigeria. While comparing previous elections, he said the 2023 general election was one of the most meticulously prepared for in recent time. According to him, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) should be commended for the technological innovations introduced, especially in the accreditation of the voters using the bimodal voter accreditation system, which has generally been scored very high by voters. Also, the unprecedented enthusiasm demonstrated by the Nigerian youth who trooped out in their numbers, despite structural and procedural challenges, were largely responsible for some of the positive developments. INEC should be praised for the technological innovations introduced, especially in the accreditation of voters, using the bimodal voter accreditation system, which has generally been scored very high by voters. Video shows more detail.
As winner, tongues have been wagging and discussions have continued around the process. Recall that on the 28th February 2023, when the collation of the results from the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory for the presidential election ran into logjam at the International Conference Center, Abuja, IPAC, after due consultations, intervened and encouraged INEC to continue with the process in order to guarantee the survival of democracy in Nigeria. The two major opposition parties, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, the Labour Party, LP, and their presidential candidates, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi, respectively, as well as about 3 other political parties, disagreed with the outcome of the elections and have since gone to the Presidential Election Tribunal to challenge it. The elections have been described by some local international observer missions as having fallen below the minimum standard of what free, fair, and credible elections should be. As the tribunal's decision is being awaited, the honestness around discussions on the election's outcome appeared to have been stirred once more with the recent release of the final report on the findings by one of the foreign elections observer missions, the European Union Election Observation Mission, on the February 25th and March 18 elections. The EU EOM, which worked for 3 months in Nigeria between January 11 and April 11, 2023, had a total of 110 accredited observers from 25 EU member states, as well as other countries. The mission, that's EU, offered 23 recommendations for consideration by the Nigerian authorities as part of its contribution to improve the future elections in Nigeria. IPAC has noted the content and recommendations of the EU EAM report and other reports and will respond as active and most critical stakeholder in the electoral process within a fortnight. IPAC has put in place a committee to carry out a thorough review of 2023 election with a view to engender dialogue between all stakeholders on electoral reforms to achieve improved democratic practices in Nigeria. Compared to some previous elections, IPAC is of the opinion that the 2023 general election was one of the most meticulously prepared for in recent times. Also, the unprecedented enthusiasm demonstrated by the Nigerian youth who trooped out in their numbers despite structural and procedural challenges were largely responsible for some of the positive developments. INEC should be praised for the technological innovations introduced, especially in the accreditation of voters using the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS, which has generally been scored very high by voters. It is on record that the success rate for BVAS accreditation stands at 98% compared to the smart card readers, 29.2% during 2019 general elections. Also, the unprecedented turnout of the youth yearning for change against the status quo resulted in 5 political parties producing state governors, 7 parties won senatorial seats, 8 are represented in the House of Representatives, and 9 in state houses of assembly. Clearly, the 10th National Assembly is certainly the most diverse in party representation since 1999. In some states around the country, different political parties control the legislative and the executive arms of government. What is clear from these records also is that the days of single-party dominance of our national politics are probably gone. Furthermore, many prominent candidates lost in their constituencies they contested, and political parties lost in some of their presumed strongholds. IPAC will be glad to share with you at the official presentation of our findings in a few weeks the way forward for the growth of democracy in the most populous nation on the continent of Africa. Thank you for listening to me. We actually take exception to such pronouncements before the conclusion of the tribunal cases because, like you rightly said, it is prejudice to do that, and that's why we didn't want to dabble into such issues, because we are affected directly. So perhaps EU, not being a direct participant, in the cases, perhaps can make such pronouncements that they have made. But in our own particular case, we cannot. You can start correcting, anything at all. So we don't, because we are coming out with observations as to how we can deepen democracy and ensure that the process is much more freer than it was, hitherto. So that's what our report is all about, is how do we take it from where we are now? Because yes, there are encumbrances, on the system. Some are intended, and to correct such systems or such processes, you need to take a stock and do a thorough, examination of what must have happened, so that you will now be able to chart a way forward that will take cognizance of everything. That those who rush to give the reports, perhaps they are not as critical to the process as we are, because we are the political parties. Every other person is talking about us.